This is a tour of the electrical cabling routes. This again is for my reference because I will never remember where everything goes. So we've got the rear brake light switch running up the frame. It then dives underneath here, and that enters this loom here. We've got the black and we've got the green cables. There is the battery cable, which currently loops over the top of the frame here and then goes down into the battery box. This I don't think is the standard routing. From the loom we've got the blue and the orange cable, and that feeds back to the indicator loom. And then we have a loom that passes down the underside of this frame here, which is out of focus. And this is one I want to move, I think, because this sits right above the exhaust expansion chamber, and I don't think it would have been there originally. I'll try and reroute it to the other side. It travels underneath this frame and then along the top here. After that point it exits underneath the frame and travels along till it gets to this point. At this point it branches off into these here. It's difficult to tell exactly where stuff's coming from. This particular cable, which is black and red, goes through the frame and down to another loom that we will trace in a moment. In the meantime, the loom we were following is currently travelling along across this bridge here, underneath these two cables here, one of which is the choke and one of which is the throttle cable. It passes through this clip and then travels forward. At this point it heads upwards and separates out into the bird's nest that is behind the bowl. Okay, so this here, the bit I'm wobbling, oh come on focus, turns into a whole bunch of cables, and they seem to be entering, sorry Maggie, they seem to be entering the headlight bulb through the large orifice at the back. It's a bit complicated and I don't think I'm the first person who's been in here. As a side note, the brake cable runs up over the top of the accelerator cable and the choke cable and heads north. Oh no, that's the speedo cable, sorry. The speedo cable runs north up to the back of the binnacle. We've got two looms that run up this side frame. One of them is coming from the what is this? This side is the generator side. So this comes up from the generator, and this one comes up from the ignition sensor. They both run up this side frame and then they dive underneath this bracket here, this triangular bracket. From that point they head between the two plates that form the upper engine mount. So between these two they both dive in there. The narrower cable, which is the ignition cable. The ignition cable runs up and meets this block here. This is the first block with the green and the blue cable. Okay, the second loom, which comes from the generator, is a bit more complicated. That red and black cable we saw on the previous loom comes in here. Then we have a white and red and what looks like a white coloured cable going into this red connector here, and then we have a red and a yellow cable, and that runs in to this thingamajig, which I think is a rectifier. I think that's the 6-volt rectifier. From that 6-volt rectifier we have a black, a red and a green cable. all three cables run into this connector here. Yet more wiring loom notes. The first connector block with the green and the blue cable comes out the top here and heads, where does it head? I don't know where it heads. Let me pop it out and see if we can give us some more room. Come on. That's better. It heads underneath these. I'm going to follow it round. It runs underneath those blocks here. This is the indicator relay and this is the back of the rectifier unit. I don't know. I wish I knew more about it. This is why I make notes. But that cable that runs underneath that we were just tracing runs into the back of this block here, whatever this thingy is. So yeah, that's a thingy. Well done. But that's the black painted thingy. I'm sure we'll find out when we read the manual what it actually is. Going back round, connector block number 2, the red one, has what looks like a yellow and white and red. So it is a continuation of these two, runs through here, up underneath here. I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to make myself seasick watching this, I think. No, don't want to come out, I'm not going to force it. Not yet, anyway. It runs out of the top of connector number 2, and I have no idea where that goes. I think it runs into the loom at this point. And I've got to be a bit gentle because I don't want to damage anything. Yeah, it certainly looks that way. It certainly looks like it joins the loom at, where am I? At this point here. So, and then connector number 3. Connector number 3, God, I'm not very good at this. Connector number 3 is this one here, with the green and the black cable coming out of it. That also joins the loom at this point, and they both go over the top of the cables running into the indicator relay. The indicator relay itself looks like the cables are sort of tied up together. They sort of come through here. I don't know if they're attached or not, and then they enter into the loom at this point, I believe. So this is a bit of a bird's nest and a junction box with cables going under. Okay, I mean there's a lot of a mess here, a lot of mess. So I think that's what's happening. I think these cables, such a mess. Who knows? We'll find out more when we get this out of the way and start taking the cables out. I'll make a second set of notes. We've got a green cable that runs into the loom at this point, but also joins this box here, and there's a white cable that runs forward from this point. Incidentally, just note that this was originally a black cable, so who knows what's gone on there. I think that's all the notes I need to make at the moment, although I haven't looked at the ignition coil. The ignition coil is fed from, what have we got? Okay, the ignition coil is fed from this black and white cable that runs down and goes into the back of the ignition coil. The ignition coil faces forward with the HT lead poking out the front. So this black and white cable runs up into the black painted box at the back that I kept calling a thingy. So hopefully we'll be able to disentangle all this, but we'll have to make very careful notes.